Look at videos for Britney Spears songs, and the comments are filled with hopes and prayers for her to defeat her conservatorship. Reporter Bianca Bruno met some of these fans on the courthouse steps outside the pop star's latest hearing.
Free Britney now! 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 Free Britney now!
Britney Spears is free. After 13 years in a contested conservatorship controlled by her father, Jamie Spears, the pop icon was able to successfully kick her dad out of the legal guardianship, which is set to be terminated later this year. Hundreds of supporters and journalists flocked to the courthouse to witness the historic hearing.
And why are you here supporting Britney today?
I've become heavily involved in the Free Britney movement over the last 2.5 years or so. You know, as we learned about these allegations of abuse in her court case, we started coming out here and rallying. It was just a dozen of us with pink posters, and to have seen the evolution that now there are hundreds of people here today. The whole world is watching because we're realizing that this court case is quite complicated, and unfortunately not just an isolated incident. This is not just a case that affects Britney Spears, it affects the entire probate court system in our country.
For years, the public didn't know exactly how Britney Spears felt about being subject to a conservatorship following a very public mental breakdown. This summer, we heard directly from the pop star herself.
Britney says she felt traumatized, exploited, and demoralized, telling the court, "I just want my life back."
Britney got her wish last week when a Los Angeles Superior Court judge found it was in her best interest for her father to be removed as conservator. But how did one of the most iconic American pop stars end up being subject to control from others in every aspect of her life, from her finances to her birth control? To get up to speed, you need a 101 lesson on conservatorships in California.
There are all kinds of people who may become conservatees: the elderly, the developmentally disabled, or those with serious mental or physical disabilities. What they have in common is that they need help managing their daily personal needs or financial affairs.
All conservatorships, which are called guardianships in most states outside of California, are really by definition disability rights issues, because only people who have disabilities or who are perceived as having disabilities end up in this process at all. And we don't know whether Britney Spears identifies as a person with a disability. I don't know anything about her diagnoses or how she thinks of herself, but the court, by putting her in a conservatorship, has taken away her really core civil rights, her civil liberties, her opportunity to make her own choices about her life because they perceive her as being disabled.
That's Zoe Brennan-Krohn, an attorney with the Disability Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union. This summer, the ACLU joined over 24 disability rights organizations in filing a brief in Britney's conservatorship case advocating for her right to select a new attorney after her prior attorney stepped down.
Having the right to an attorney is really critical in these proceedings, and you need to have a lawyer who advocates for your stated interest, who is not overlaying their own views and their own values into their advocacy. And we see that a lot in conservatorship and guardianship cases, that in many cases you don't have a right to a lawyer at all, which is really shocking. That you can lose all of your rights essentially permanently with no lawyer in the room. But even in cases where you do have a lawyer, people often have lawyers who don't take seriously what their client is saying they want.
And that appears to have been the case for Britney, who this summer revealed her wishes were not being considered.
We do know, and we've heard from Britney directly saying, "I don't like this. I don't want this. This isn't helping me. This is hurting me. This is making me feel unsafe. It's making me feel like a child, and I want to get out." People should not be in conservatorships unless they are truly the absolute last resort. Conservatorships should not be used to sort of help make sure a person makes good financial choices, or to control their financial choices, or to control their personal choices. And it seems like that's what it's being used for.
But the path for Britney or anyone to get out of a conservatorship or guardianship is fraught. Disability rights advocates have called out how easy it can be to get into a conservatorship and how hard it is to get out of one.
How do you even go about finding someone to help you get out of the conservatorship if your conservator controls everyone you talk to? It can be a really Kafkaesque situation that people can get trapped in.
While Brennan-Krohn said conservatorships and guardianships are a recipe for fraud and abuse due to the power differential between the conservator and conservatee, we don't even have the data we need to take steps to address problems in the system.
We don't know how many people are in conservatorships and guardianships, or how long they've been in there, or how they feel about being in them. The estimates are that there's 1.3 million people in conservatorship and guardianship across the country, and that around 200,000 new guardianship proceedings or conservatorship proceedings are started every year. And the populations that get into them primarily are young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, who often get into conservatorships through what's called the school to guardianship pipeline, where people just go directly from being children to being placed under guardianship as soon as they turn 18.
Britney's very public fight to get out of her conservatorship has sparked interest in the unlikeliest of places, the halls of Congress. Her case sparked Senators Elizabeth Warren and Robert Casey Jr. to ask the Justice Department and Health and Human Services publicly share data the agencies collect on guardianships in the United States. Across the aisle, Republicans have also come to Britney's defense, with Senator Ted Cruz coming out in support on his podcast.
On the question of the conservatorship, I am squarely and unequivocally in the camp of free Britney. I think this is friggin' ridiculous what is happening to Britney Spears, and it needs to end.
But where should the changes start?
There's not enough oversight now, and conservatorship is typically a state and a local issue. It happens in state courts, in probate courts. It's not in federal court. But that said, there's a lot that the federal government and state governments can and should do to expand protections and to fix this system.
One of the top fixes disability rights advocates want to see: fewer people in conservatorships and guardianships in the first place.
Another really big part of it is reducing the number of people in the conservatorship and guardianship system altogether, so that far, far fewer people ever lose their rights that way, ever get caught in this system, ever come near this system. I think we need a much broader way to divert people out of guardianships who might otherwise be at risk of them, and to support people using voluntary supports to direct their own lives that don't ever end up with court involvement and the loss of civil liberties.
Helping people with disabilities create a support network to make life decisions, a concept called supported decision-making, is a skill non-disabled folks are trusted to employ when making big choices. Extending that autonomy to disabled people may require additional or different support systems.
The concept is really that simple, of giving a person with disabilities the opportunity to choose who they want to help them, what they want to help them, make their own choices. And you can do that without court involvement, without loss of your civil liberties. And it actually protects people more because it's giving them autonomy. It's giving people the opportunity to say what they like and what they don't like, and to have that respected.
After seeing Britney continue to perform and work while being under the control of her father, folks want to see that autonomy extended to her.
Really, the most striking thing that I see is that her case is actually very similar to cases that we see all the time, that people with disabilities get into conservatorships and guardianships often very easily and find it extremely hard to get out of them. This case is really not an anomaly in a lot of ways.
What do we want? Free Britney! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Free Britney! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Free Britney! When do we want it?
president, a singer, a pop star's father. The facts in these cases triggered outrage from a public that loved and trusted them. But these cases also show the system working, embodying that American ideal that even the most powerful will be brought to court for accountability. Thank you for listening! Subscribe to Sidebar CNS on Apple and Spotify so you don't miss the next episode where we dive into stories of a divided court and a divided nation, from the highest court in the land to the QAnon agenda.